Over the past few weeks, U.S. President-elect Donald Trump has threatened to take Canada, make it the 51st state, take control of the Panama Canal, and buy Greenland. On Christmas Day, Donald Trump wrote this on Truth Social, quote, "Governor Justin Trudeau of Canada, whose citizens' taxes are far too high. But if Canada was to become our 51st state, their taxes would be cut by more than 60%. Their businesses would immediately double in size, and they would be militarily protected like no other country anywhere in the world," end quote. So what's behind this new expansionist rhetoric coming from the U.S.? Adam Taylor is partner at North Star Public Affairs, joins us from Ottawa this morning. Good morning. All right, so some of these social media posts are dismissed as jokes and empty threats. Do we need to take these statements more seriously?
Well, I think we need to take the threat of protectionism that's coming out of the United States seriously. That certainly the idea of a 25% across the board tariff coming our way very shortly is concerning. But I think this 51st state stuff is a bit of the rhetoric that accompanies the Trump administration's approach to its trading relationships around the world. So I don't think we should expect tanks over the border anytime soon. But the dependency we have on the U.S. market is real, and we need to take that threat very seriously.
Yeah, and what's the point of all this? I mean, what role does antagonizing U.S. allies play in Donald Trump's return to the White House?
Well, I think it's twofold. The first is obviously the idea that the United States wants to show that other countries need trade with them more than they need trade with other countries. And Canada, sadly, falls into that world very, very much so. 80% of our exports go to the U.S. market, so we need the United States. We're an export-dependent country when it comes to our bilateral trade with the United States. So I think it's to show that, hey, if we aren't prepared to make concessions, then there'll be consequences. So there's certainly some truth there. The other side is, I think, the Trump administration wants to show, and Donald Trump himself wants to show, that he's a big, strong leader, and that put the world on notice that the United States is going to be tough to negotiate with across the board. So if he says, if we're going to be very tough with our strongest allies like Canada, imagine how we're going to treat countries like China and Russia. So I think that's part of it as well, the full global context.
That is great context. I'd have to think about the people that are surrounding Trump, like his team. How do they respond, and how are they responding or defending his comments?
Well, it seems everybody is behind and getting in line with this approach to trade. And it seems often we've seen some of Canada's trading partners, when we're in tense negotiations, they negotiate through the media, and they use some of these tactics and rhetoric to advance their trade and commercial interests. And I think that's part of the approach now. We see that they're negotiating through the media. So we're going to have to figure out what our ability to negotiate through the media is as well, because everybody seems to be rowing in the same direction when it comes to this rhetoric, especially the 51st state stuff. Trump himself is mostly leading the charge, but it's clearly not something that's being disputed by those in his administration. So we just have to be ready to negotiate fiercely.
Can I ask you about the comments about Greenland? It's not the first time we've heard him say this. Donald Trump posting on Truth Social that America feels that owning Greenland is an absolute necessity. The country's prime minister hit back, saying Greenland, not for sale. How is the international community reacting to all of this?
Well, I think a lot of countries are just confused by this rhetoric. I mean, this is a president who said that the United States needs to get out of doing the world's bidding on wars, and needs to retreat and go home and pursue an America First agenda. So talking about annexing, Greenland or making Canada the 51st state sort of runs counter to all of that. So it just is a little bit bizarre. But at the end of the day, I think it's just this idea of being a strong man and therefore getting results. And also, I think the Canadian government putting $1 billion worth of border measures in the fall economic statement shows that some of this rhetoric gets results, and I think they've pointed that out. They said, look what Canada did on the border. So I think some of this is for the good news is some of this will set up for the Trump administration and Trump himself to say, look, I'm getting results, and then I can remove the tariff threat, which hopefully is what comes of it for Canada.
Good point. Adam Taylor, thanks so much for joining us this morning.
You're welcome.
If you liked that video, make sure to subscribe to the Your Morning YouTube feed, where you can find all kinds of new content posted every weekday morning.